Hello and welcome to episode 34 of the Crash and Ride podcast. I'm Patrick Ferguson. I'm your host. Today's guest is Erika Rickson. This episode is part one of a two-part interview I did with her. Erika is the drummer from the noise rock band Motherfucker. Hi, Dad. That's right. Her band is called Motherfucker. They're an amazing band. I've probably seen Motherfucker more than any other Athens band of recent years, and every time they blow my mind. If this is your first episode of Crash and Ride is a long-form interview podcast where I talk to musicians who survived anxiety, depression, addiction, and abuse. I had the idea that if musicians could talk honestly and openly about our suffering, that we might start to see some of ourselves and others, and we could start to have honest conversations and start to heal. As I said before on this program, in the absence of any kind of central healthcare system that really isn't a huge, expensive pain in the ass for self-employed people, no one's going to take care of us but us. I am a working musician. I play drums with the rock band 5/8 from Athens, Georgia. 5/8 has a show coming up as part of the Athens, Georgia Wild Rumpus Festival. That's like a 4 or 5 day Halloween celebration. Athens is a town that has a really hard time letting go of Halloween. October 26th, there's a big parade. There's a show at the Caledonia with us and the band Monsoon. I guess we're probably playing around 10 o'clock. There's a bunch of other shows around town you should come see. My friend Adam Klein is playing at Hendershots. I may be sitting in if we can make the schedule work. So, come see 5/8, come see Adam Klein, go see the show at the Georgia Theater. I can't remember who's playing there, but I'm sure they're great. For more information, go to wildrumpus.org, wildrumpus.org on the internet, and there will be a full detailed schedule of events and lots of pictures from past parades and stuff, and it's definitely something you should check out. Longtime listeners will know I also play drums with the Tokyo rock band Pinky Doodle Poodle. They're a really great high-energy rock band that's kind of like seeing Motorhead, only fronted by the singer from Shonen Knife. Currently, they're in Visa Purgatory. They're back in Tokyo. We're waiting on a contract from the record label. Once we get that sort of settled, we can start the process of getting their visa application in. And, hopefully they'll be back before the end of the year. We're booking shows in December. There's going to be a show at the Go Bar here in Athens, Georgia on December 7th with 5/8 and Pinky Doodle Poodle, hopefully. I'll keep everybody posted. I've gotten a couple of emails asking for updates about Pinky Doodle Poodle. I don't have any news right now except that. I have a couple of quick announcements. Crash and Ride is brought to you in part by Greer Amplification. Greer Amps builds the best boutique effects pedals available. If you're looking for an overdrive, boost, fuzz, compressor, or tremolo that is rugged, road-tested, and at home, on stage, in the studio, or in your living room, Greer has a pedal for you. Nick and his staff strive to build the best products around with the best tone you've ever heard. They believe in their products, and they stand behind them too, backing each one up with a lifetime warranty to the original owner. Each Greer Amps product is hand-built in Athens, Georgia, USA. Go to www.greeramps.com or visit your favorite music retailer today. Crash and Ride is also brought to you in part by Jittery Joe's, a local coffee roaster based here in Athens, Georgia. They have a special espresso blend named after the podcast. You can get Crash and Ride espresso in their stores, whole bean or ground in cans. You can order it off my website, crashandridepodcast.com, or you can order it off the Jittery Joe's website, jitteryjoes.com. It's a really great espresso blend. It's especially good if you make it on the stovetop on the mocha pot, which is how I make my coffee. If you don't know what a mocha pot is, just look it up. It's a really cool steel espresso pot. It goes right on the stove. If you want to try before you buy, Crash and Ride espresso is being served in drinks at Hendershots Coffee Shop here in Athens, Georgia. Hendershots is a musician-owned and operated coffee shop just steps away from the University of Georgia campus. It's run by a guy named Seth. Seth's an amazing drummer. He also runs a great coffee shop. He's a great guy. Later this fall, it's now looking like maybe the second week in November, I'm going to do a live episode of the podcast where I'm going to talk to Bob Sleppy, the director of Nucci Space. Nucci Space is a nonprofit based here in Athens, Georgia that is just one of the most amazing things about the Athens music scene. Nucci Space has hourly rehearsal spaces. They have a coffee bar. They have like a year-round used gear garage sale that's always running there in the lobby. If you walk in, you'll see gear here and there. But the most important thing that Nucci Space does is they provide referrals and subsidize mental health care for local musicians. And just in this simple thing that they do, they have saved many, many lives, including my own. I walked in there when I was in crisis many years ago. I sat down with someone. I told them what was going on. I filled out a form, and they made a phone call. And less than a week later, I was sitting in a counselor's office, and it cost like $15 an hour. Now, I don't know what the current rate is, but I guarantee you it's something affordable like that. And if you're a musician in crisis, walk into NutriSpace, ask to speak to somebody about that, and they'll do the referral, and you'll get some help. And I think that is priceless. So if you want to support NutriSpace, rent some rehearsal time out at one of their hourly studios. Go down there, buy a cup of coffee, buy some gear from their used gear sale. They also have a recording studio where they train young musicians to be recording engineers. You can book time in that studio. It's pretty deeply discounted, but you get really top flight help. Great people there. If you're one of those people who's fortunate enough to have some tax liability you want to offset, you can. Any donation you make to NutriSpace is tax deductible. They are a 501c3. Call NutriSpace at 706-227-1515. Tell them you want to make a donation, or just go to their website at nuci.org. That's nuci.org. Speaking of nonprofits that I wholeheartedly support, if you're suffering from anxiety and depression, if you're contemplating self-harm and you need someone to talk to, call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-8255. It's 24/7. It's free. It's confidential. They have trained volunteers to talk you through your crisis. 1-800-273-8255, or go to suicidepreventionlifeline.org. If you're a trans person suffering from anxiety, depression, gender dysphoria, and you want to talk to a peer, call the Trans Lifeline's Peer Support Line, 1-877-565-8860, or go to translifeline.org. If you want to support this podcast, you can go to our Patreon page, patreon.com/crashandride, and you can sign up for a $5 or $10 monthly donation to help keep the podcast going. That's how we keep the lights on. Or you can sign up for a coffee membership where I get basically the same thing, $5 or $10 a month, but you get a pound of espresso every month. So that actually ends up being a pretty good deal for both of us. It's like $35, I think. That covers the coffee and shipping and a small donation to the podcast. Or you can go to our website, crashandridepodcast.com, and get a T-shirt or a pound of coffee or a pound of coffee and 5 T-shirts, or however you want to break that up. That's at crashandridepodcast.com/store. All right. This week's episode, I am so excited to have finally talked to Erika Rickson. Erika is probably my favorite drummer in Athens, and she's in my top 5 favorite drummers in the whole world. She's so talented, and she's such a good person, and she's incredibly smart. I mean, you need to listen to this interview. Like, this is a person who has a mind that is just it's like incandescently bright and just lightning quick. I love talking to her. I love touring with her. We've been on tour together. We've played a bunch of shows together, and she's just a delight to be around. And I didn't know until we did this interview just how heavy some of her backstory is. I knew that it wasn't easy, but I didn't know it was like this. And it's amazing, to her credit, that she's managed to rise above it and become such a stellar human being and such an outstanding drummer. This is part 1. She came to the house here, and we had coffee and a couple bottles of Topo Chico each, and we talked for a very long time. And I've left most of it there because I think it's all important. We do nerd out about drum stuff a lot. There were some people who I've talked to lately who've been like, there hasn't been a whole lot of music talk in your musician podcast. I'm like, well, welcome to episode 34. We talk a lot about music. Yeah, I'm really glad she came. This week is part 1. Next week will be part 2. Stick around. Thanks for listening. Let's jump into our interview with Erika Rickson. All right, I'm here with Erika Rickson, drummer of the band Motherfucker, formerly of the band Maximum Busy Muscle, and also you've got a new project called Ghost and Go, right?
That's right.
And it's great to have you here.
Thank you.
How long have we known each other now?
That's a great question. Shit.
It's been
I don't know, Patrick. How long have we known each other?
7, 8 years, I think.
At least.
Yeah.
It's going on a decade. It's been there. Yeah. Well, I want to say it was probably like 2012, 13, probably. I remember because I was trying to, I think the way we actually officially met, because I think we talked online a couple of times about drum crap,
Yeah.
like you do.
As I do a lot.
Yeah, somebody referred me to you for something about a thing, like a question about an old kit or something.
Yeah.
And then I was trying to sell an old kit that I had, and I needed like some random piece of hardware, and you're like, I'll just give you this one. And then you met me in a parking garage, and I was like, this is so nice. And I just remember being so struck, like, this dude that I've talked to like a handful of times is just going to give me like a hi-hat stand or something so I can then immediately flip this kit.
It was the Iron Cobra hi-hat stand. Yours had a broken part, right?
That was probably another time that you helped me out. Like, of the many, many times that you were like, hey, you just need this one thing that I have 8 of. You want that?
Yeah, I'm not
and I'd be
keeping
like,
score.
Yeah, well, you're winning. Because although I do have a closet full of junk, like every drummer, I don't think that I think I've hoarded more than paid it forward at this point. So that's my next task.
We have a mutual friend, John Chalden, who he does that Drummers Weekly Groovecast podcast, which is really great. And that guy has turned his tendency to hoard drum parts into a second income. Like, he's now selling everything off on Facebook Marketplace and stuff.
Yeah. I've kept everything because I always thought, okay, if I'm also extremely disorganized all the time, but I always thought, like, there's going to be a moment that this particular type of washer or this particular proprietary, tension rod or something is going to be essential. And honestly, that has been true more often than not, but I still have way too many of them.
Every time I go out into the garage and start rooting through a box, like, I know I've got a Ludwig large classic lug here somewhere. Yeah. And it turns up and I'm like, ha, victory.
Yeah.
My poor wife, she looks out in the garage and she's like, why?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
Speaking of friends of ours, Jake Kreger, who was my interviewee for episode 1, and he's sort of become the de facto producer of the show.
That's awesome.
That guy he's a terrifying drummer.
That's absolutely true.
It's almost upsetting to watch that.
When
guy.
I watch him play, I think everything I've been doing and working on, I haven't been doing it or working on it enough. First of all, like, every ounce of sweat I've put into it is just like, it's meaningless. Right. Because this dude he creates a soundscape that if you just turned off everything else, it would still be interesting.
Yes.
You could turn off, and Multicult as a band is one of the most, it's very clearly the sum of its parts. Everybody's doing something interesting. I love that. And yet it's cohesive. It's so rare to see. It's not like, cars crashing into each other, but everybody's driving a Lamborghini. You know what I mean? Right. Everybody's got their gear dialed in. Everybody's got their sound dialed in. It's very intentional. Actually, Rebecca from that band, we had a really boring conversation about drum rugs last time they played in town. We played with them. We were just, and they had a really sexy drum rug, and I mentioned it kind of like, not to be snarky, but I just thought it was kind of funny. I was like, oh, you got your drum rugs, on fleek. I didn't say that. God, I hope I didn't actually say that. But she was like, oh yeah, it's intentional. I'm like, whoa, all right, cool. Yeah. Like, and of course it is. Like that band is so, they're so precise, and I love that about them. And Jake in particular, like his approach to, a really meaty, like unfuckwithable bass riff is, oh, well, I'm just going to do this really sparse over the bar thing. Right. Instead of just like what we would do, which is just like, let's line up that kick drum and like send it on to Bonham Town,
Chase it like a dog chases a car.
Exactly.
You might never catch it, but he's always just kind of on top of it. That guy is just a phenomenal drummer.
Absolutely.
I think the first time I saw him, he was playing a Pearl export kit he'd pulled out of a dumpster and then spray painted orange.
That's fantastic.
It just crushed everybody.
And I'm sure he was... Yeah, and it probably sounded good somehow.
Sounded amazing.
And
I don't know.
Yeah,
I think it's just
that.
The way that he hits the drum.
I hate you, Jake. Not really.
We hate you, love you, Jake.
I wanna eat your cereal and absorb your powers.
Yeah. I want to go back to so this whole thing where you hoard gear and you kind of stick every stand, even if it's bent or broken, into a closet. I do that, and I think it is because I experienced a lot of economic precarity when I was younger.
Oh yeah, that is 100% why. That even goes back to like my family. Like everyone in my family has done that to some degree. Like hanging on to just things that you don't need. My grandmother had Vogue magazines from like the 80s, like early 80s, everywhere in the house, and which was cool because I read them as a kid, and I don't know, it was like time travel in a weird way, but like old sewing patterns just in case, you know, like, and this was, you know, it's like nobody's ever going to make their clothes again. Well, they will after everything finally does shut down, but like straight up, I just would find these, you know, drawers full of yarn and stuff. And then like, I don't know, I've tried to minimize that in my life. I feel like I've
tried.
Yeah. Like I've done,
failed.
I feel like the average person would be like, yeah, she's kind of a hoarder. But if you knew my family history, you'd think like, you're doing okay.
Yeah.
Like you're all right. Like it's a step. Like you're 25% less of a hoarder than your mom was.
See that desk right there?
Oh yeah.
That's my grandmother's sewing machine.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's one of these singers that folds up.
I know. That looks, honestly, when I was talking about like the thread and the sewing patterns, that looks identical.
The thread is in there.
Yeah.
I still have like many bobbins of thread that I just can't bring myself to throw away because they were my grandma. Do you know what year your grandmother was born?
My grandmother was born 1929, I believe.
Mine was 1924. So she
was 93 when she passed. So
yeah,
you know, math, 29, 27, somewhere in there.
Yeah, I guess our grandmothers were very similar people. And my grandmother would look out at my garage full of drum parts and old tools and stuff and be like, "Yeah, you're prepared."
Yeah.
You know?
No, yeah. My grandmother is a huge influence of my entire reality, but
was or wasn't?
Still is. She's gone, but she definitely influences me all the time and has my entire life. Like,
how old were you when she died?
She actually only passed last year, so it's still kind of a recent grief, but it's you know, she had dementia, Alzheimer's, all that, so it was, you know, a process of letting go for a really long time. Yeah. So, you know, but
what did your grandma do for a living?
My grandmother, career.
Yeah.
My grandmother had a master's degree in music. Like,
wow.
And especially for at the time. And she grew up in Texas. So, she went to the University of Oklahoma, got a master's in music. The way she paid for school was by playing in like the jazz band, and she played cello, she sang, she ended up she was an opera singer too, trained. Like she did it all, kind of.
What was her name?
Margine.
To Margine.
Yeah, absolutely. We're cheersing on our coffee right now.
We're toasting Margine. Yeah, she sounds like a superhero.
Absolutely. Like my grandmother was, you know, she toured. She ended up working in her 50s. She worked with the Atlanta Boys Choir a whole lot, and they went to, and you know, she actually sang with them as well. Mm-hmm. And they went all over Europe. She sang at Notre Dame. She did so many awesome things. She taught in a high school in Texas. Like she taught Mexican boys music.
Wow.
With a huge language barrier. And this was when she was like 20. She, like, seriously, and my whole life she would just talk about, you know, these grandiose things. I think she really just attached herself to those moments. Like she really, like, down to the way the air smelled, you know, the pebbles that she would kick around. Like she loved Italy especially. Like she would talk about like the particular route that she would walk to get, breakfast in the morning. Like, I mean, details, my whole life. And she was very present in my childhood, very much raised me as well. And I was very lucky to have her. A lot of people don't, know their grandparents at all. And my grandparents were super involved in my life. And my grandmother just like really shaped my interest in music. And in my mind, it was, my grandmother just talked about traveling so much. And I was like, oh, well, I'll play music and then I'll get to travel. That's literally how it formed in my head. And I just always wanted to do it anyway. And it became this like conviction. I mean, I started lying about being a drummer when I was like 4. I would tell people that I played drums and I had, no access, like.
Yeah. That's funny because Mike Mantione was last episode. He sat where you're sitting.
Yeah.
Just like,
I listened to him. I listened to him talk about that actually.
Lying his way into being forced to learn how to play.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I wasn't lying because I thought it would make me look cool. I just couldn't wait to get there.
Yeah.
Like I literally could not wait. And I remember, this like way cool, like older boy who was like probably 16 was babysitting me and I was like 9. And he was like, oh, I'm starting a band. And I was like, well, I'm a drummer, so I'll be your drummer. I had no drum kit, never played in my life. I just thought about it all the time. Like I knew I was going to do it. It's weird. Like a lot of people, you hear that with like veterinarians a lot. They're like, I wanted to work with animals since I can remember.
Yeah.
And for me, it was playing drums for whatever reason. And that instrument in particular.
By the way, me too. Totally.
Yeah. Like I had no interest in playing like guitar or any of that. I didn't care. I was like, yeah, I'll let the guitar players do that. Not interested. Just always wanted to do it. And I would talk about it to who anyone, if it came up, I was like, oh, well, I'm going to be a drummer, and, I asked for drum kit every year.
Right.
I believed in Santa like way too long.
Right.
My mom went to great lengths to create the illusion of Santa for me. And I believed in Santa for a really long time. And every year I was like, where's my fucking drum kit? Like, why don't I have it yet? Where is it?
Dear Santa, what the fuck?
Yeah, Santa, I've been asking for this for like 6 years. So
yeah.
But finally I got one when I was like, I think I was 13. And then, it was over after that.
Yeah.
So.
Tell me a little bit about the sort of, you and I talked a little bit about this, so I have kind of an unfair head start on the listeners, but I know that growing up there was a lot of, your mom was a single mom, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you guys struggled to make ends meet a lot. You had a younger sister.
Yeah. So the timeline goes, my mother and father got divorced when I was 5, and it was particularly weird. My dad had joined. This is my mom's side of the story. I don't know my dad's side of the story. I don't know my dad that well. But my dad had joined the army and was going to be stationed in California, I think LA, or something. And we went to California to go check it out and then came back and it was like, okay, I'll send for you when, it's time, I guess. And he disappeared. He straight up went AWOL. And, the people from the government came to our house like, hey, where's Bill?
Yeah.
And my mom's like,
what they would do.
Yeah, they went looking for him. And then, according to my mom, he sent a postcard with a picture of him like in front of a nice sports car or something. And she's like, yeah, so what the fuck? And then she researched a way to divorce him without him actually being there. So there was like a loophole, and she left him while he was AWOL. because, he wasn't coming back clearly. And he was just completely disconnected. It was super strange.
It is really weird.
Well, I mean, my dad was an addict of probably everything.
Yeah, that's what's going to be my next question.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's definitely mentally ill. I don't know like the specific diagnosis, but he, last I knew, was living in a halfway house in Charleston, which is where his sisters live, who I actually have kept in contact with here and there. They're great. I love them. I don't know that side of my family that well, but I've had a few instances where I've gotten to hang with them. And actually, my cousins are amazing. I have two awesome, beautiful young lady cousins who are like, I look at them and I'm like, this is what I would have looked like if I was like athletic and had like a stable my one cousin Chloe, she plays ultimate frisbee and sought me out because she was doing a tournament in Athens, and I saw her and I met her and I was like, oh my God, you have like all my features, but they're like exactly what I wish I looked like. Right. It's weird to have somebody come up to you and you're like, oh yeah, that's like me and my perfect alternate reality. And I know it, like her life isn't perfect. And I know yeah, she's a complete individual and like has her own thing, but like, it's so strange to be completely separated from one half of your identity as far as like your genetics and your family, and then see the manifestation of that. It's so weird, but
those ultimate frisbee players are super athletic.
Oh yeah. Oh, and they're also like all really fun. Like I've never met an ultimate frisbee player that wasn't like, yeah, we're gonna party and we're gonna have a great time and everybody's my best friend now.
Yeah,
and we're all gonna, I don't know. They're all just like super amped about life.
Yeah, I've had the same experience, but never really noticed it. But you're right. Like as I sort of go through the people I know in my mind who play ultimate, every one of them, I picture them all smiling all the time.
Yeah. It's a high level of energy required to do that. Yeah. I could never do that. It involves like running and jumping and carrying, and I don't have time for that.
the three impossibilities.
Yeah, exactly.
Running, jumping, and carrying.
Yeah. Carrying is probably the most important for running and jumping.
Right. So
I've run away from things, and that's when I cared the most. Right. Was when I was in danger. So that's about.
So your mom finds herself a single parent when you're 5 years old. How old was your sister at that point?
So my siblings actually. My epic timeline. So it was just me and my mom actually for years and years and years, and we moved all over Atlanta. ITP, OTP for those that care. I've lived in all the corners. It's and we moved every couple of years, so I got really used to that. I would make a lot of friends in the neighborhood, and then they'd be gone. So I got used to making friends very quickly, and I also spent a lot of time alone, which created a lot of imagination in my in my mind. So my mom was in nursing school when I was growing up. She finished nursing school when I was 9 or 10. Yeah. She was 43 at the time, and I was super proud of her because she had a lot of insecurities about, her age and when she was finishing, and but I was just so proud of the fact that my mom was like, you know what, I'm doing this. This is what I wanted to do before you were born, and this is what I'm going to do now. And she did it, and she'd been working as a medical assistant that whole time. And it was, it was easier back then to just kind of work in a doctor's office without any kind of, college degree at that time. But she, she never stopped working. And so she was working, going to school, raising me alone. My grandparents, like I said, were super involved. I spent a ton of time with them, and like that's how it happened. That's how it worked.
Right.
I spent a lot of time with my aunt as well. So like it was definitely a team effort.
Were there ever times during that period of your life, though, where you kind of felt like you were on a shelf?
Honestly, no.
Yeah?
I felt like my mom was extremely attentive to me in those years. We played video games together, like we hung out. She would take me to the arcade on the weekends and we would, play pinball together and stuff. Like she was super interested. Like we went to movies together. Like honestly, and this is kind of weird to say, but like we were kind of best friends. We would go out of town and just, I don't know. And we just laughed all the time. We had a really good time. And I didn't really see my mom date very much until I was probably, close to, I was also young. So, it probably happened and I wasn't very aware.
Yeah.
But as I got older, it started happening a little more. And eventually my mom met someone and they got married when I was 11. I was 11. So I found out that my mom was pregnant with my brother, and then they got married very shortly after that. And
right.
And she was pregnant in her 40s. So that was a decision. That was like, okay, we're doing this.
Yeah.
So my brother was born when I was 11. And then my sister was born when I was 13. They're not even exactly 2 years apart. It's even shorter distance. So I was an only child until I was like 11 years old. And I was kind of, I had only child syndrome big time, and I didn't know what that was or have any concept of that until I was older.
What does that mean?
Only child syndrome happens when you're told, like, and not every only child has this, but you'll see a lot of folks that are, become adults and they feel as though their interpretation of life is the most correct or the most special or the most important because they were fed so much of their parents' attention and were told, like, you're smart, you're special, this kind of thing. And there wasn't any competition for that. There's no sibling to kind of like take you down a notch or to share that love with or that attention.
Right.
And I was very much like, I don't know, I was going down that path, I think, and also like in my family, there weren't other kids. It was just me. So Christmas was like a huge party for me. It was like my aunt, my uncle, my grandparents, all the presents are for me. I'm the only kid, and like I learned to talk with adults mostly. Like I got really good at hanging out with adults because that's who I was around. So it was, I was definitely going to be an asshole. I would have been funny, but I would have definitely become an asshole. And then, my mom got remarried and then we moved very quickly. I moved into, my stepdad's house with my mom, and that was really difficult. That was really tough.
You had your mom to yourself for a long time.
Yes, and I was very lucky for that. And so, the other thing that came with that was realizing my mom's alcoholism. So up until that point, I had no awareness of my mom's alcoholism. None. I think I was protected from it more than I realized. There were a couple of moments in my foggy memory where I'm like, why was I in that situation? Or I convinced myself there was like a dream that I had where like my mom was passed out and we're in a car and I don't know what to do. And it's like, no, that actually probably happened.
Yeah.
I'm sure that happened, and probably more than I remember because I probably justified it in my kid mind. But
just the two of you?
Yeah. And when my mom remarried, the alcohol was just rampant suddenly to me. My stepdad.
I guess you probably weren't going to your grandma's as much then.
I was never not doing that. I mean, honestly, I was there a lot. I was there as much as I was at home, I think. And that was pretty true of my whole childhood.
Yeah.
Super involved, like I said. And I my grandparents, they've been, they knew about all of her destructive behaviors that had stemmed from her alcoholism. I mean, she started displaying that behavior when she was like 19. I came to find out. This is all from, years later I found this stuff out. But when I was young, I think she probably was sober the longest in her life, like at that time, which I cherish that time because I think it was a very significant time in her life.
Yeah. Was her sobriety at that time, do you think she was doing a 12-step thing?
I know she did. Sorry.
It's okay.
I was preparing for this interview like all week, and I thought like I'm going to cry in like 30 seconds. But I've probably cried in front of you before, I'm sure. I cry a lot more than I used to, and that's okay. That's important. You got to do it.
Well, I think it's just being able to feel your feelings is allowing. I mean, one of the things about kind of adult childhood alcoholic things is that you spend so much time not allowing yourself to feel your feelings because they're inconvenient for your alcoholic parent for you to have needs. You know?
Well, and what was difficult, like my entire life changed when I was 10. Like it just flipped. I was, like I said, like my mom was my best friend. I thought that I had this like great family and that we were all just like, so functional. And I knew all these kids that were like, I don't know my grandparents. I was like, my grandparents are awesome and I see them all the time. And I just felt so safe. And that completely got shattered, just like decimated. Like
when your mom both started drinking again or heavily.
Well,
and she remarried to this other. Was he also?
So
a drinker?
he was also is an alcoholic. He would say that he's recovering. I don't know that he's sober. I don't know his current situation. I do know that at that time he was drinking heavily and she was drinking heavily. So suddenly I'm living in this bachelor pad with like hideous leather pleather sofas and let me paint you a picture.
Okay.
So my stepdad at that time, and probably still, his taste is just insanely bad, like horrific. He had those like stone lions that you can buy to put at the end of your McMansion.
Yeah.
So he had this like shitty little like ranch house, and he put them on, and at the end of they were just kind of in the yard. And he had one of those big satellite dishes, like the biggest one to be like, look at my big satellite dish. It was just like, it was seriously just like, I don't know, just this vision in his head of like, I'm so grandiose. I'm so, and then you go in and it's just like the tackiest, most like surface level, insecure male bullshit. And, so I lived in that situation, and as a 10-year-old, like I got really skinny at that time. Like I remember every day I ate one healthy choice lean, like basically a microwavable meal, and it was lemon pepper fish every single day, and I ate one of them, and I fed myself because they were drunk all the time and fighting all the time, and I was completely just left to my own devices.
Right.
And and like to this day, if you put that in front of me, I would freak out. Like I cannot, like that, like microwavable, like fortunately I don't have to eat that way at all. But like if I was met with that, I would be so uncomfortable. But so
And then you got adulted because you suddenly had two younger siblings, and I'm going to guess that at the age you were at that point, 12, 13, 14 years old, you had to take care of those kids while they drank.
That's right. And they built... so we moved to Marietta, which was close to where my grandparents lived in Sandy Springs. And Marietta, East Cobb County, is a very fake place where very wealthy people buy very, it's the grandiose, like, I'm going to display my wealth in this very tacky, obvious way. Mm-hmm. So we moved there, and they built a house that in a brand new development, little, cul-de-sac off of a major, like, street that was, it's not like a quaint little neighborhood. It's like you build something that is supposed to be quaint off of a major highway, essentially. Right. And so they built like the second house in the whole development, and we moved into this, vaulted ceiling, big kitchen, marble countertop. It could have been nice, but then my stepdad felt like he needed to paint everything, and it was like these dark primary colors. Like the living room was forest green, the office was blood red, the kitchen was like, deep plum purple, like just dark clashing colors. Like if you saw it, you'd be like, what the fuck is going on in here? It just didn't look right, the whole thing. And
it sounds like a set from Sesame Street.
It was. I wish it was Sesame Street. That would have been great. I would have taken that. I could have used, like, if it had gone to the kind of insanity that was like ironic and funny, that could have been great. Right. I could have at least nurtured some like weird creativity in me, and I'd have like a great solo album. But no.
So I'm getting this strong impression of this sensitive girl who had this really tight family bond with her extended family, who had been adulted. So that person is going to have a very open, vulnerable, emotional life. And then you're put in what I imagine to be like the most like Mean Girls, Heatherish school system on the planet, which is Cobb County.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
That must have really sucked.
Oh, and I had been going to these liberal, like, private schools prior to that. So, like...
Your grandparents... Oh, because your grandma was an artist, and she...
Yeah. And I actually got a scholarship to one of them, which was really nice. They identified me as having, quote, mild dyslexia and attention deficit early on, which, I thought when I was diagnosed with that I, like, you could have told me, like, you have the rarest disease on earth. Like, I didn't know that was something that was going to be like, oh, everybody kind of has that to a degree. Right. like most people, like a lot of people in America, a lot of kids have that. And I was like riding that wave when it was like, we're going to pump Ritalin to all the kids. We're going to, and schools are going to get kickbacks for it and shit like that. And I was definitely a part of that. But so I went to some very like small classroom, very liberal, very, like we would celebrate May Day, like with a maypole, like pagan as hell, like really not conventional, not Montessori, not quite as unconventional as that, but different learning styles. And it helped me a lot, actually. I'm really thankful that I did that. I was able to do that because I feel like I can function way better from the subtle tools that they actually managed to put in my brain. But then so the same year that, my brother's born, we moved into this McMansion kind of, sort of, in this completely different, landscape of wealth and...
Yeah, they voted for Newt Gingrich right about that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. These are absolutely like... Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if they're Trump people, but they're definitely like McCain people, definitely like George W. Bush people, definitely. Yeah. So I all that happened. I changed schools. I go from these like liberal tiny classrooms to this big public school.
Right.
With, tons of wealth, tons of, a lot of like And, you know, I'm also just now realizing my, like, oh, I've had it pretty good, you know, like nobody actually cares about what's going on in my head right now. Nobody here wants to hear what I think or have to say.
Right.
And I was absolutely the most awkward kid ever. Like at that time, I had completely become withdrawn, and I am such an extrovert, and I was so quiet. Like I had trouble like answering questions in school without whispering or stuttering because I had just been so absolutely defeated in my ego, like absolutely crushed because I had to, you know, like you said, adult when I was a child, and also, you know, there was a baby in the house now, and, you know, I was having to learn how to help them, but also sometimes just be the parent.
Right.
You know, like there were times when, you know, a lot of fighting, a lot of, you know, almost violent fighting sometimes, a lot of rageful alcohol, like fueled gasoline on a fire shit. And, you know, a baby in a crib upstairs and me like pretending I don't exist in my bedroom, you know?
So based on some personal experience that I've had, a lot of times kids they're diagnosed with dyslexia or reading disorder or attention deficit, but people don't look at the underlying anxiety that is causing them to overanalyze the information in front of them for fear of failing. And it sounds like you were right there. Anxiety
was not a word that I knew could describe my situation until I was maybe 19.
Yeah.
I wish somebody had been like, anxiety, it's a thing. General anxiety, that's you, friend. And it's like, well, of course I have anxiety. Everything is
on the verge of
volatile.
exploding.
Everything was volatile the whole time. So when my mom was pregnant with my sister, it was a secret, which apparently I found out later. My mom tried to keep it a secret from her parents and family when she was pregnant with me, which I don't know. That was the thing she did. I don't know what that's about.
Well, as she was drinking.
Yeah, so maybe that was, I don't know, maybe that's the whole thing. I don't know. But either way, my mom was pregnant with my sister, and I remember my stepdad like busting into my room. I must be 12. You know, I've got MTV on full blast because that's the safe, you know, TV was my safe space.
Right.
And and he busts in, he's like, "Did you know she was pregnant?" And I'm like, I'm 12. I don't know anything at all. I know nothing. I don't know how to live. I don't know how to talk to people anymore, you know? And it was just this whole like chaotic scene of like, why didn't you tell me she was pregnant? And I'm like I had devised some evil plot. Like I was gonna my 12-year-old self was like, yeah, we'll take this baby and we'll do something. I'm like, what was, I don't know.
Scheming
I'm never
against the old man.
Exactly. It was so weird. Like,
hey, did you find a lot of when you were during that time that your crazy parent was the busting into rooms thing just something that happened to me? Like when you described that, I was like, oh God, I remember that door banging open. Like there was no private space for me.
Yeah. I mean, and it elevated to the point where I would just sit against my bedroom door. Yeah. So if somebody tried to get in, they couldn't because I was physically pushing against it. Like if some shit was brewing and I knew something bad was about to happen, I would just sit against my bedroom door.
How long did that relationship last?
They were together. So it was very brief actually. So they got married when I was 11 and they got divorced when I was 14, or started trying, you know, the process took a really long time. But I was 14, and we moved out of the McMansion into like an actual like human family house, which I loved. I was so happy to get out of there, and it wasn't far, and it was a real neighborhood, and we were in this like actual place that felt like a home. Shortly after that move, she filed for divorce. Actually, no, that's not true. He filed first. She asked for a divorce, and he filed first because he thought it would make him look better, probably. I don't know. But
it seems like in your memory of him, he's very concerned with appearances.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's just identity. I have no... that is a person that I have no affinity for at all. I don't want... I remember thinking when they got divorced, I hope I never have to see him again. Yeah. Like, I knew my mom would have to because of the kids, but I knew, like living in the house, if he was picking up the kids, I would just not go anywhere near wherever, like the driveway or wherever he was going to be. Like, I just avoided him like the plague because every association I had with him was absolutely the worst time. It was, I mean, honestly, there was a period of time when I didn't remember a lot of things.
Right.
I had blacked out some of it.
Yeah.
Or blocked out. That's what I meant to say, which is similar to blacking out. It's just, selective.
Right.
But yeah,
as I said last week, it's a good childhood when there's just blank spots.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, maybe we're not, your brain's like, we're just going to put that in a drawer.
Right.
And when you're a little older, we're going to open it. And then you're going to have a lot of problems. It's going to be fun. You're going to love it. It's a surprise for later. It's like a time capsule. A time capsule of pain and confusion and an identity crisis.
Little trauma gift for the future. Yeah.
A trauma gift. That's very funny.
So this is 15, 16?
Yeah. So, okay. So by the time by the time I was 13, 14, thank God we had a basement and I had a drum kit in it. And that was about all we had down there.
When was your first band?
So I never really had high school bands, like rock bands. I never got to do that so much. Like I would play with a lot of people, but nobody would like stick around. And I don't think it was because I like totally sucked, even though like, I totally sucked because I was a kid, but I think it was just, there were a lot of actually like crazy talented kids in the area that I grew up in. Because I guess probably because they, there was money and resources. So these kids would take like tons of lessons. Yeah. And I got lessons eventually, but some of these kids would be in, full blown bands that were out doing stuff. And I feel like it was also because I was a girl too. Like there was a little bit of a stigma with that. Like nobody was, the boys wanted to play with the boys. It was just more serious. It was taken more seriously if you were male. Like, oh, you're a boy with a drum kit? Well, you might be the drummer in my band.
Right.
But, I was just, a kid with a toy, I think, to a lot of those other
I remember running
boys.
into that as a teenager. My first, punk band had a woman named Kat who played bass, and that was perfectly normal to me, and that seemed like the thing. And there was a lot of who's she? Whose girlfriend is that?
Yeah, right.
This was 15 years earlier than you were dealing with that. But even in the 90s, I feel like there was some of that weird, stupid gender segregation thing with rock and roll, and I think it's finally diminishing somewhat now. Like the last 5 or 10 years seems like it's finally a little better.
Well, if you look at trends and what's selling, I think that's absolutely true. I think that women have taken a hold of part of the music industry. And I also think that the music industry, as frivolous as it is, because it is, and as, plastic as it can be, it goes for okay, well, what's something they haven't seen? And now it's like, oh, well, let's give these women let's give them some attention now because it's different. Because everybody's seen a bunch of white guys doing their thing, and it's
have they?
Yeah, it's 4 white guys formed a band when they were in their 20s. Some of them went to college together. And that's the end of the story. You know what I mean? some of them drank booze, some of them did cocaine, and then, rock and roll happened, and you should care. And now it's more about a narrative. Like, I think the people I know that are trying to, that are doing PR and are, helping bands pitch to records and stuff, it's like, I have to sell the story of you more so than even the music sometimes. Like, okay, let's get the music's fine, but like, what's the story behind it? Can people latch onto it? And I think now more than ever, the story that women have been trying to tell and that women are telling now is being, received. People are interested. Actually, a lot more queer women too are getting big record deals. Like, actually, I just found a interesting dichotomy of there's this artist Marika Hackman or Marika, I'm not sure, and she's English, and she sings about, like, she's got this like really haunting, just completely like, depths of your soul kind of voice. But it's also very like irreverent, and she'll sing about like, yeah, today I masturbated all day, and that's the song, and we're not used to like directly talking about that with women. Like, Cyndi Lauper did She Bop, and She Bop's all, euphemisms, but this woman's literally like, yeah, I like totally just sat around and jerked off all day. And I think that's really empowering for some people. You know what I mean? Like, you just don't hear women talking about that. I would estimate there are a quadrillion billion songs about dudes masturbating out there. Quadrillion billion is my professional guess.
Yeah, maybe double that. Yeah.
2 quadrillion billion. So, but okay, so she was dating this other artist that's doing very well called The Japanese House, who is just this woman making really, beautiful music, and they were dating, and they have songs on their records about each other, and there's actually, and then they broke up, and then they did a video together about, like, The Japanese House has a song about their breakup, and then they did a video of it, and they're both in it. And I'm like, that is the most gut-wrenching thing. I can't imagine like breaking up with somebody and then being like, yeah, you want to just like be in the video? And like, they look forlorn at each other, and they have all these moments, and it's just like, God, that's so raw. And I'm like, but that's a story. That's a narrative.
Yeah, no
People
kidding.
like your eyebrows are up right now. You're like, I'm going to check this out later.
Totally.
Like, seriously. Yeah. And it's like, okay, so here's a story that hasn't been told necessarily in media. Like, not I'm not going to just talk about like, just queer women, but that is happening. You're also seeing just, I think a lot more women of color are getting to tell their story more honestly. It's not being trivialized or turned into something else. Like, you can only make dance and party music. No, like, it doesn't have to be that anymore. Sure. Like, you can write, very vulnerable yet powerful songs. You don't have to choose between being like a folk artist in a coffee shop with an acoustic guitar or, Joan Jett. You don't have to be an extreme, or like Madonna, where it's like party music. You can actually have one song be about how you jerked off all day, and then another song be about like, I went on tour and I had this crazy show, and then another song be like, yeah, I went through this really difficult breakup. You can actually create a story.
I think the combination of the democratization of the technology of recording, like we're just sitting here between us, I've got a recording interface and a laptop that takes the place of an enormous recording console and tape machine that I would have had to make a recording like this 40 years ago.
Right.
The combination of that and the just mostly collapse of the hierarchical music industry as we know it, that, for whom the highest sort of achievement was Emerson, Lake and Palmer or Led Zeppelin, of like the primacy of the white male sexual being is kind of like, we're in a post music industry age now where Like if you can do something compelling and figure a way to get it on the internet, you can find an audience.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
I think that's glorious.
absolutely. Like,
and there's some white dudes who are real mad about it.
it's true.
You know? There's some guys. I mean, there's a guy in this town who seems like he's going to spend his silver years screaming at a lamp that he deserves 3 more wishes. And
That's an awesome way to say that.
I just like, I kind of feel bad for the dude, but at the same time, I'm like, well, I mean, okay, dude, maybe you can get the 90s back if you just like wish hard enough.
Right. Wish harder.
Yeah.
My next EP.
I want to go back to that basement. So you had a drum
yeah.
set in the basement,
Mm-hmm.
and
So the drum kit that I had, the first drum kit I had was a navy blue Pearl Export, just like everyone my age had.
yeah,
And it saved my life, like absolutely, truly saved my life. Like
I believe that.
I was not a bad kid. I got into some shit. I definitely skipped school a lot. I definitely smoked a lot of weed.
yeah.
But I wasn't out there, you know, I wasn't doing anything bad. You know, I didn't have a lot of rules put in front of me. I never was grounded. That was never,
Right.
you know, I never had a lot of discipline, which I have realized as an adult I've been craving my whole life. I've been craving discipline. I still crave it. Like, I have to create these really elaborate routines for myself. Otherwise, I just flail. I can't. I have to have a routine. It's
That's
absolutely imperative.
So
yeah.
Jake, our hero Jake,
Yeah.
he's going to be so embarrassed.
Our
when he hears
enemy
this.
and hero.
Right, our frenemy
Our
Jake.
nemesis.
Yeah,
And our highest aspiration.
he's into to-do lists. He kind of got
Yeah.
me doing it. Like I make to-do
Yeah.
lists now so that I have like specific milestones I have to hit in a day,
Yeah.
and it keeps me from just like staring out the window or just
Yeah.
staring at my phone all day.
So I this is a weird thing to talk about in this context, but I realized I had a little bit of OCD when in high school I would make these unending schedules for myself, like down to the minute. Like I would break down everything I had to do, but I would never actually do any of the stuff. I would just spend all this energy, like hours alone with a piece of paper and some music on, just creating plans to be better than I was or to achieve. I really did want academic success, but I couldn't do it. I could not. I didn't have a safe space to achieve that. And I completely internalized it, put a lot of guilt on myself. In my mind, it was always like, well, yeah, I have a hard time at home, but like, I'm fine. You know, like I've got clothes on my back. I've got food, you know, occasionally the water heater breaks, but like, I'm not, even then I was kind of, now we call it white privilege. Now that there's, you know, white people have become aware of a thing that they created. And I'm saying that because like, I am always checking it. Like, you know, it's not like we call it white privilege. It's like white privilege existed and your ass just was blind to it. But like even then I remember thinking like, you know, there's a kid somewhere that would give anything to be in my fucked up life. Yeah. Absolutely anything. And I remember trying really hard to live up to an idea of what I was supposed to be.
Okay. When did you realize that you like girls?
Oh, that's so it was and my story is like a tale as old as time. Like it's like it's the quintessential like, you know, queer kids story. Like, you know, I mean, when I was very young, like, you know, I had a friend that would be like, let's pretend we're boyfriend and girlfriend and kiss and stuff, you know, and it wasn't like dirty or bad or anything. It was very innocent, but like, I didn't really process that, like, not everybody does that. Like, that's not something everyone does. So, and I didn't really put a lot of thought into it. I always had crushes on boys. I always had a crush. I was the teen with like I delved really hard into the like teen bop magazines, like with the posters of the, you know, boy stars like Leonardo DiCaprio and Jonathan Taylor Thomas, which if you look at those boys at that age, they look like really attractive lesbians. It's true.
I've never thought about that.
You wouldn't, because you're a dude. You're a straight dude. You wouldn't. That's not something you would think about, but other queer women talk about this like it's a thing. Like, oh, I used to look at Leonardo DiCaprio and it's like like in his youth, you know, there's almost like a femininity to it. There's an innocence to it. Like, you're not an aggressive man yet. You're just this youthful, I don't know. And you're also a kid. Like, so, you know, whatever. It's
mostly pretty innocent.
Right. Like, okay, when Hanson came out, so it is widely agreed upon that Taylor Hanson looked like a girl to a lot of people.
Me included.
I thought he was the greatest thing that ever happened because he was a boy that was so pretty. I just thought he was so pretty. And I was just like, oh, and I was so embarrassed because Hanson was not cool to like. And I bought the CD and I didn't let anybody know, you know. It's just like, I'm just going to secretly love Hanson. And like, and it wasn't about the music at all. I was just like, this boy's cute, whatever. But yeah, I had all these posters up on the walls and stuff. And then I think so much of that was me trying to like justify a heteronormative thought pattern. Like, I like boys. See how much I like boys. Look at all this evidence of how I like boys. And then I would like pick a boy in my homeroom to have a crush on every week.
Every week?
Yes, systematically. And the reason I did that, this was like 6th grade. I did that because I was like, well, I'm supposed to.
Right.
Like, every girl is whispering like, oh my God, look at that boy. He's so cute, blah, blah, blah. Who likes who? You know, that was such a thing. And I was like, oh God, I don't even know who I have a crush on. So I would just pick somebody and I'd be like, well, that person hasn't been an asshole to me. So you are the guy I have a crush on this week. You know what I mean? And I realized so like later, I was like, oh, I'm literally just trying to convince myself. I'm just trying to convince myself that this is who I am. So when I was still in middle school actually, and there was this girl on the bus every day that I just was so enamored with, and I would think about her all the time. And she was so funny to me, and there was just something about her that I couldn't. I got to the point where it was like upsetting me. Like, I was upset that I thought about her so much, and I didn't know why I was thinking about her so much. Like, I had no idea. And I got so upset that I talked to my mom about it. And I remember saying to my mom, you know, I don't know why I care. And I was like in tears. Like, I don't know why it matters to me if she has a good day or not. You know, or if she's okay, or like what's going on with her.
God, that's so sweet, though.
Yeah, it was very innocent. And you know what my mom said? She goes, do you think you might be attracted to her? And I was like, no, that's gross. That's gay. It's gross. And like at the time when I was a kid, like the worst thing you could call somebody was a fag.
Oh, yeah.
And I actually remember the first time I heard that word. This is all when I got into public school, of course.
Yeah, of course.
I'm in 6th grade and it's like faggot. And I'm like, what is that? And I didn't know what it meant. I knew nothing about it. And I remember there was some girl who was mean to me. And like, you know, shyly, I'm like, you're a fag. And I just like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just launching slurs that I don't know what they mean at other people. And, but yeah, so my mom, you know, very, you know, like my mom was very dysfunctional, and her alcoholism definitely wreaked havoc on our lives and has fucked me up a lot. But she was so loving, and she cared so deeply for me about like who I was, what I wanted to do. Like, if I wanted to play drums, that's great. You know, oh, you might be attracted to a girl, you know, have you considered that, Erika? And, you know, I'm mortified. And then like, I remember that same day, I got real quiet after that. I just like went in my room and like fuming, like, God, my mom's so mean. She just called me gay. What? And then I was like,
wow, maybe I should like really think about that for a minute. And then I came back to my mom and I was like, maybe you're right. I don't know. Like, so my mom actually helped me come out.
Yeah, that's amazing.
My mom like helped me realize, like, I would have just sat there and banged my head against the wall until, I don't know, something would have happened. But like, she was like, yeah, that's a thing. It's like, I think it was one of those things where like she knew the whole time. Like she was like, yeah, you're queer. And then, okay, now's the time that you're ready to hear that you're queer. And now you're 12 and you're having feelings you'd understand. And it was cool. And my mom even gave me options. Like she got books and like presented these ideas like, you could actually be gay. Or maybe you're just having a lot of hormones because you're 12. It could be one or the other. And the answer was, yeah, I'm a big old queer. But, I'm actually bisexual, which confuses a lot of people and confused me for a lot of years because even in high school, I had my first girlfriend and I was really quiet about it. I was super secretive. And I really regretted that for a really long time because she was just so like ready. She was ready to be like, middle finger to all of you. We're together. This is how we're living.
Was this in Cobb County still?
Yep. We were 15.
Yeah, that was not an easy place to be gay.
No. I remember there was like one very obviously gay dude and I just thought he was the coolest person that ever lived. And I was like, how do I talk to you? I don't know. And he was just untouchable. And I just revered him. I was like super confident, like strutting down the hallway and like all the jocks just like hauling at him. And he would just like keep walking, head up, and just pinch his left ass cheek like, fuck you, you wish you could have this. And I just worship that kid.
I'm always curious about the interior life of people with that kind of like, who appear to have that kind of just massive emotional strength.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like there's two ways to conquer that kind of social adversity, and it's to be fierce as fuck like that kid, or to be like I was and to just hide and try to blend in and not be seen. And I think that there are things that come with both. Like there are positives and negatives. And I think when you strut and you try to be overly confident, maybe you shut off a part of your vulnerability and you don't let people in as much. And that's just who you are. And like, fuck you, I'm this way. I know a lot of gay people like that, actually. I know a lot of gay people who are unyielding to others' ideas because they feel like they had to fight for who they are and they're never going to betray that again.
Yeah.
And that's fair. I also know a lot of people like me who, I hid a lot in that time, but, I had a really, serious relationship with a girl when I was 15 that lasted, a couple of years, which is an eternity when you're in high school.
Yeah.
And all, our friend group knew about it, but it was very hush hush for me. And I regret it, but I also understand from my situation, like I was protecting myself on all fronts. Like I didn't have time for assholes at school when I was, dealing with, assholes at home, I didn't have time for that. So, but like I said, drums saved my life. I just got way into marching band. I joined marching band and it became my reality. I just, that's all I did. I didn't do my homework. I just practiced my rudiments.
Yeah.
Like I would get frustrated with a math question and I'd be like, yeah, this doesn't really matter. I'm just going to crush these, these paradiddles with a metronome, and like, that's literally all I did. I took every exercise and just murdered it forever. And it for whatever reason, it was the thing that had come the easiest to me. I never felt like I couldn't get it. I never felt like I couldn't take the problem and solve it. And then, sky was the limit. And it was the only thing I ever had that way. I couldn't do visual art. I was fucking up in academics. Like I was okay at some things. Like I'm very much like, language, I could do that. And I was doing really well in like literature and stuff like that. But like, I just couldn't give a fuck about science or math or any of that stuff. And it was all about how fast can I get this paradiddle to go?
Right.
How clean can I do it? How can I show up for practice and just absolutely, decimate it? And
was there a feeling that you had to prove yourself as the female member of the drumline?
No. Here's why. We had a shit ton of girls on my drumline, a fuck ton, and it was awesome. I loved it. Yeah, we had a lot of girls. My class, for whatever reason, had, I think, the most girls that they'd ever had. I mean, half of our battery was women. It was girls, and we all, our freshman year, most of us were on the cymbal line and then moved up, and some people quit band and some people kept going, but like there were always like, women crushing it. In fact, there was a girl who, she was Mormon, and I always suspected she was queer and, forcibly gonna be closeted in her own mind for the rest of her life, and probably still is. She was so fucking good. She was talented as hell, and she was super nice. Mm-hmm. And we would just practice off each other. And she was always like a little bit better than me. And I'm so thankful she was in my life. Like, if I didn't have that person that was kind and also somebody I could relate to, it's like, here's this girl who's like, awkwardly queer and, which that's me asserting, but it was pretty clear to most of us. But she just absolutely slayed. And she slayed like at the like mallet percussion too, which I sucked at, but she could like get in front of anything and just crush it. And she would run drills with you until, the sun went up. Like she would go forever. And she pushed me to really, she figured out how to teach me how to push myself without even knowing she was doing it. I think she just was just that passionate about it. And it really just like ignited that in me too. Yeah.
A lot of high achievers are often running from something too, though.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I mean, just trying to stay one step ahead of her strong feelings. You know?
And I'm just really thankful that she pushed me like that. But I did drumline, and I kept going with it until I dropped out of high school, which I wish I hadn't done, but I did.
What year of high school did you drop out?
I was a junior.
Yeah. What made you think that was what you needed to do?
The situation at home was hitting critical mass. It was just,
your mom was single again. This
untenable. And my mom was just drunk all the time. And like the kids, there's two little kids in the picture, like, and my mom was working.
They're what, 6 and 4 at that point?
Probably. Well, when I was 15, so my brother would have been.
You dropped out before you could drive.
No, I could drive. Yeah. I was 17.
Okay.
I was 17 when I dropped out. So that would have been my brother. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. He would have been 6.
Yeah.
So like I'm at home and I'm managing it. When you're 17, you're trying really hard to just be whatever identity you think you're supposed to be. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like you're trying really hard to grip an identity. It's like that's the time when you want to become who you are. Like I was very done with what I thought I should be, and I really wanted to just be like, okay, this is me. I'm going to do that as hard as I can. And that's really hard to do when there's little kids who are in, frankly dangerous situations with a parent who is completely volatile and falling apart, and the divorce was super messy and lots of,
appearances, man. You get somebody like your stepfather who's very concerned with appearances.
Yeah.
When they get into a situation where they're getting divorced, they can't lose. Like they have to win.
Absolutely. It was definitely about that. Yeah. It was brutal, and my mom was just, it was tearing her up, and the kids needed her full attention. And she also had a really stressful job. She was working as a case manager for Kaiser Permanente at Piedmont Hospital every day with terminal patients. Like, okay, well, can we afford this respirator? Shit like that. Let's talk to the doctor. Like, managing between the actual medical side of things and what the insurance would allow. Like,
God, that's got to be the worst job.
Like, she was working for the man, you know, but she was trying to like defeat it from the inside for people that were going to die. And every fucking day. And I'm just like, so you go do this thing every day. You come home to, you know, my grandmother took a lot of took the kids on a lot as well, and I'm really thankful that my brother and sister had the experience with my grandparents the way I did. But it was just super difficult for my mom, and you know, I'm an indignant fucking 17-year-old. I'm like, God, fuck you, man. You know, like,
right, sure.
I'm just like, why can't you be better at life? You know,
right.
And you know, I've forgiven my mom a lot as I've gotten older, because I'm just like, I can't imagine that. I can't imagine, like, you're going through a divorce. You have this really like just kick you in the ass job. You've got 2 little kids, and you're completely consumed by your addiction. And it's I just can't imagine. I cannot imagine it.
At some point though, you got out of that household.
Yeah, I stayed there. So when my friends started going to college, I just stayed with them in their dorm rooms or in their shitty houses with like 8 people living in it. You know, I would just sleep on the couch a lot. I couldn't. When I was 17, I got a job working as a vet assistant with this insane doctor who had no memory because he'd been in a crazy car accident, so he never could remember my name. And this is a veterinarian performing like complicated tasks, you know, medical tasks, but he had no short-term memory, none. And he would just snap at me and call me girl and be like, girl, go get the what's it called? And I'm just like, fuck. It was
girl, get the thing.
It was hard, that job, but man,
yeah, no shit.
Yeah, but like, it was the first time I ever did something hard and stuck with it, I think. Yeah. Like, everything that was hard, I was just like, oh, fuck it. Because like, I would rather fail and take a 0 than try to and do not great, you know, like try my hardest and still fail in my mind. So like, the fact that I was working this job, and this was after I dropped out, you know, I got that job and I was working full time, and it was an experience, and I ended up being in animal care for like 8 years, which was cool. But I didn't have enough money from that to really go get an apartment, or, you know, so I would just go to my job. I would go home and get clothes and like eat something out of the pantry, and then I would find a place to sleep, you know, a lot. So I was living at home, but not at home.
Were you trying to get out ahead of your mom coming home? Is that the plan? Or
it got to the point where I could go, like, when I was in high school, I could get off the bus, and before I even got in the driveway, I could tell if my mom was drunk based on like the way the car was parked, or if there was something that shouldn't have been out in the yard or something, like, or the mailbox was like left open. Like, I could tell, like, my mom's fucked up. I already know.
Yeah.
Like, and it's the tiniest stuff. Like, it became like total survival mode. Like, seriously.
I think I have a theory about why so many musicians and artists have dysfunction in their background, because that sensitivity that you're talking about now expands outward beyond just physical manifestations of chaos, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't just that the mailbox was open or that the car was sideways in the yard. That there's also the sensitivity to a person's body language and a person's and their tone of voice, and whether they're slurring, and that sensitivity, I think it's in us innately when we're small, when we're really vulnerable. And a lot of people grow out of it because they have stable life situations. But then there's people who don't grow out of it because their life situation never stabilizes. And that's people who end up becoming the kind of person who gets an emotional connotation from the way that a Ludwig superphonic sounds.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
You know, like,
oh no, I it became a religious experience for me to sit down in a room by myself and just deconstruct my entire kit and then put it back together, clean every part, and like try to tune it perfectly. And I tortured myself because I had my Pearl export was like a little warped, like, and my rims were bullshit, and I couldn't tune it to sound like the dudes that were in the bands that were my age, like their kits sounded better, and I was just like, why can't I do this? And I just thought that it must be me. I don't have the ear. And I would like, and this isn't at the time when like I had internet access, right? But we didn't have like a YouTube video for everything yet. No, YouTube didn't exist yet, I don't think. Yeah, true. So it's like right before I could have just had all the answers right in front of me. You know what I mean? But I'm glad I didn't, because it literally forced me to just like crawl inside my kit and know it inside and out. And I would do these like, you know, like I said, I'm a little OCD with things that it's very selective, my OCD.
Well, it's about things, there's things you have control over.
Yes, exactly. And since I had no control in my life, like this is mine. Right. And I can do whatever I want with it. And I'm going to, you know, absolutely, you know, just know everything about it. And I would buy like every kind of drum head just to see like, okay, well, it sounds like shit with these coated Evans. Okay, well, I'll get the clear Evans. Okay, well, still sounds like shit. I'll get.
Oh, you're trying to make your Pearl export sound like,
I'm trying to make it. I'm just trying to get it to a point where I felt like I could do anything. That sounded cool. Right. And I also did not understand recording. I didn't understand that what you hear out of a speaker is not possible. Right. In a room. I had no concept of that. So I was like, why doesn't it sound like Jimmy Chamberlain from the Smashing Pumpkins every time? Right. Right. Why does my snare not sound like his? Like I didn't understand. Like I didn't.
EQ and reverb and.
Yeah. I had no idea. So I was just like torturing myself with these concepts, and like it was all very alone. Like I didn't seek out help from other people at that time because I didn't find that anybody, all the boys that I knew that played kit, because I didn't really know any girls that did, all the boys that I knew were very like, oh, it's a secret. Like my thing that I'm achieving, which was also just like some bullshit little kid nonsense, is something I have to protect. Like I can't let you know how I have achieved this thing, which it was really just like, your kit's not warped. And
right. But your dad bought you a DW.
You just kit. Have a DW, a golden DW. Yeah, seriously. Yeah. I had a friend that was just super wealthy, and he had like a fucking $5,000 kit in his basement. Right. And I'm just like, you know, and I knew that like, obviously that would be better, but I don't know. So I started, thinking, well, how do I get more knowledge? And I decided, actually, I'm watching TV. I have insomnia. I'm up all night and I'm watching TV, and I see this ad come on for the Atlanta Institute of Music. And it's like, hey, you can learn from professionals. You can, you know, do drums, bass, or guitar, and we'll, you know, help you find gigs and stuff. And like the commercial was, it wasn't too slick. It was just kind of like, is this something you've been wanting to do your whole life? And it sounds really stupid, like as though you're watching a DeVry commercial and you're suddenly like, that's for me, you know, but that's literally what happened. Right. I'm watching it and I'm like, so you mean I don't have to take a math class and I can just learn about how to play drums better? And I was like, yeah, that's for me, because I'd already dropped out of high school and I had no confidence that I could actually, succeed in an academic situation. But drums, hell yeah, I can do that. Right. And also I could get the information. I could get it and have it and know that, you know, the dude at Guitar Center who's like, well, what you need to do, right, what you're gonna want to do is get 7 China cymbals and right, exactly. I remember I had I forget what happened, but for some reason, like the front head, the resonant head of my kick drum, like got pierced, like something fell and it like broke, like hole in it or whatever.
Right.
And so I went to Guitar Center to buy another one. And the guy's like, "What the hell did you do? Did you put it on backwards? What did you do? How did you break it? What's wrong with you?" Like straight up, like, "You're an idiot. What you need is this. Do you want to be loud? Do you like, what's your goal? Like, you're like, what are you doing?" Like just totally diminishing me and acting like everything that he thought was the only way. I just wanted that motherfucker to know that I knew what the fuck I was talking about.
Yes.
And so for me, it was like, I'm going to go to school and I'm going to learn. And then it's not about, the dude at Guitar Center, but like anyone
right
that talks to me is going to know that I know what the fuck I'm talking about. So I went and I auditioned with Craig Harbour, who's worked with a bunch of Motown bands, and he is probably oh man, Patrick,
I don't know him.
You know Craig Harbour?
I don't know Craig Harbour.
Oh man, Patrick, you would love this guy.
Probably.
He's super old school.
Yeah.
He wears like these button down short sleeve shirts. He's got long hair. He's gray and he's got glasses. But he's just like, you could just tell that this dude's like, I'm going to be hip for the rest of my life. He's very Southern.
Yeah.
He's just kind of like always got this like low key smile on his face. And the reason is because he's the shit. He's quantifiably the shit. And he doesn't have to prove it to anybody. And he's probably the most pocket player I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
And he could totally smoke you, but he's gonna instead write a groove that's just so nasty that you're like, oh hell, I don't even want you to stop playing that. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's not about the flash. It's about like, I'm gonna construct the perfect part for this song. So I auditioned for him, and he got a smile on his face. He's like, "Oh, okay, you can read music. That's cool." And I'm like, "Yeah." And I'm coming in there nervous as hell. And then I played some weird linear thing, and he was like, "Okay, so you know about linearity?" And I was like, "I don't know what that means." Okay.
Right.
And he just seemed impressed with me at first, and I felt so validated because I'd been sweating it for so long. And he immediately was like, "Yeah, absolutely, let's do this." So I got in, and it was. I think there was one other girl who was in the entire school. It was very small. So it was all these dudes in black t-shirts. My first day, I saw, I was 19. I saw a circle of dudes like talking loudly at each other. And it was day one for everybody, and they're all just like, "Yeah, well, Dream Theater." And,
oh God.
or like just talking about shit, Eddie Van Halen, blah, 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 guitar stuff, whatever.
Right.
And I was like, God, I have a choice right now. I can either just sit in the corner and be like, I don't give a fuck about any of this stuff. But for some reason, I got a wild hair, and I just pulled up a chair, and I put it, and I said, "Yeah, scoot over, move over." And I sat the chair down, and I said, "Hey, my name's Erika. I'm here. I'm playing drums. What are you guys talking about?" And I just forced them to talk to me. I was just like, "I'm here. I'm in this circle now." And they were like, "Cool." And after that, like, I just immediately gained the respect because nobody, I refused to be the shy kid in the corner like I'd been. And I just made it.
Well, this was your world now.
Yeah.
Right. This is a path you blazed.
Right. And I was paying for it. Like, I was going to have these student loans. I was going to take care of it. It was my thing. And, I was like, this is 100% my journey, and I'm not going to let anyone make me feel like I don't belong here. So I just asserted myself, and it turned out that everyone was pretty dang cool anyway. But that experience, a lot of people make fun of people who go to like a school like that.
Well, I think that a lot of people make fun of that because they don't play that well.
There's that, and there's also the sense that like, I'm going to pay to become good at rock and roll or whatever. Like, I'm going to earn my, my spot in, I don't know. It's like people think of it as like the DeVry for music. And I think that that's pretty short-sighted. But
nobody in this town has your chops except maybe Mike Albanese.
I don't know. There's a lot of young folk coming up. The chops that I have all been earned.
Yeah.
There are people like, not to say that somebody like Mike Albanese doesn't earn it. He does. But that dude also is a force of nature. That guy has a cyclone in him, and it just comes out really well on the drums.
Have you ever noticed how when you run into Mike Albanese, no matter what time of day it is or what he's been doing, he always seems like he's just run 3 miles?
I was waiting for the moment that Mike would come up because it was bound to happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I'm telling you, that dude, inside his brain and reality, he's a cyclone. And it just has to go somewhere.
Yes.
And it comes out in really, really cool ways. And I'm sure in a lot of other ways that he wishes it wouldn't. But it's like, because there's always another side, you know, like
right.
the good with the bad. But like, he can, for whatever reason, channel all of that into a really compelling and impressive part.
He's quick. He's got an
Yes.
incredibly quick mind.
Yes.
Incredibly driven.
Yeah.
Mike Albanese. If you're never around Athens and you don't know the band Cinemechanica or the video game band that he's in, you probably haven't seen this guy. But he's just an unbelievable drummer and drum teacher. Great drum teacher. Has a studio espresso machine. I've made so many records there. I've lost count. But yeah, what an amazing guy.
Yeah, Mike is somebody I've ripped off more than anyone. I've probably ripped off Mike Albanese the most.
When a drummer says this, by the way, that doesn't mean that Erika came into his house and stole his VCR.
I also did that.
Yeah.
No, I didn't do that.
No,
I have your VCR, Mike.
Drummers are we're constantly stealing from each other because we see something and go, man, I want to try that. I want to see how that feels. And I know that I was telling Jake once, like, I think we might have seen Jake Kreger's band Multicult play at the same time together the first time at 529.
Yeah.
And then I know that I left that show trying to figure out the drum part for For an Object, which is probably their biggest song, for months. And then the next time that we played a show together, you were at Soundcheck and you were like playing the drum part from For an Object. And I was like, oh, he got you too, didn't he?
Yeah. I love being a drummer because you immediately have to just check the idea that anything you're ever going to do is original, has never been done before. Because it has.
Sure.
Every combination of things has been done on a drum kit. There's
Yeah.
absolutely nothing that hasn't been played. So you get this liberty of not having to worry about being original. And it's about taking the elements that move you and juxtaposing them in a way that is beneficial to a song instead of just like
you're constantly recontextualizing something
Yes.
that is intrinsic to the way that you play. There's a famous story about Zach Baroka from Jawbox taking the beat from a Peter Gabriel song, which I think was In Your Eyes, tripling the tempo, and it became the beat for the Jawbox song Savory. I think that's the songs.
Yeah. I forget who it was. Somebody and I've done this before, but it wasn't me who did this. It was like a Devo song, and they just inverted it. They're like, I'm just gonna invert the drum part and play it backwards. And I've done that shit so much, like especially if I'm having trouble with it. I'm like, well, what if I deconstruct it and flip it? Like I think of everything I can't play. It is kind of like approaching a math problem. It's like, okay, so can I understand it in my mind? Can I then translate that physically? And I was talking about the Atlanta Institute of Music. To sum that experience up, what I got out of that experience was the ability to improvise very fast, the ability to, I took rhythm dictation theory, things like that, the ability to feel like I can absolutely own a part, in the sense that if I can't possibly comprehend what somebody else is playing, if I can listen to it again and write it down, then I can learn anything. Even if it's not exactly right. And in fact, that's one of my favorite things to do. The band Helms Ali has an incredible drummer, and she does stuff that just doesn't make sense to me, and it's like it sounds amazing, and sometimes she'll play these things and I'm like, I would have never done that, and that can either be the best or worst thing,
but I'm going to do it now.
And so I'm going to try to figure out how not look at a video, but like try to figure out how she's playing that.
Right.
99.9% out of the time, I always make it too complicated, but it's such a satisfying exercise to then take just a snippet and master that snippet. Like I've done that with a lot of really like intense metal bands. Like I won't learn an entire song. I'll learn a section.
Right.
And then that section is mine. And then I can take that and put it in something that I'm doing or reconstruct it in a way. I don't think I'm flashy. I don't think I'm a very like, I'm too busy to do some things that I would love to do. Like like when I watch you play, I think that dude is serving the song as like 110% and absolutely just doing exactly what should be done and needs to be done. And it's powerful and it's satisfying and you're one of those drummers that it's like, yep, fuck yeah, that's what goes there. And I love that. Like Tim Payne and Vinkus, he's another one of those. He's like, yeah, he doesn't need to do something flashy to make you absolutely just gaze at him like, man, yeah, absolutely, that's what goes there. And I love drummers like that. I am obsessed with drummers like that. But then you have somebody like Mike Albanese who's like, yeah, I'm just gonna reinvent like this entire like soundscape for you. Like,
but that's how you play, right? So
well,
I think of when I watch you play, I think I would have never thought of that. That is so unbelievably creative, and I love that. Is there a drummer that makes your brain itch? They're so good it makes you crazy. Because there's a couple for me, and
yeah, I mean for sure. I don't want to say Mike again. Damn it. No, that dude. Like seriously though, he. I have never watched Mike play and not tried to capture it in my mind. Like there's so many moments that I'm like, I'm going to freeze frame this in my head and I'm just going to absorb it and try to, shoot it back out in some way in my life. But like especially in Cinemechanica, which is very much his project and probably, what he's best known for. I think he's absolutely just doing everything he wants to do creatively, and like he'll challenge himself. That's something that I love watching drummers do, is challenging themselves on stage or writing a part that maybe is too difficult initially and then becomes essential and
it's
becomes
like lying your way into playing an instrument, right?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. I mean,
I've forced myself to have to learn this part that I wrote.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I do that a lot. And actually, right now, I'm actually trying to get away from that. Like what I was talking about with Craig Harbour, like here's a groove that you cannot deny. Right. Undeniable grooves. That's what I care about. Like I want you to hear the groove and just be like, that's good enough right there. That's all I really need.
Right.
And it doesn't have to be complicated. Most of my favorite bands, the drums are super straightforward. I love it, and it's super important to me that it is that it can stand on its own. That's what I think about. Like going back to, Jake from Multicol. It's like you could turn everything off and that's gonna be fine with me. Like I'll just sit down and listen to it. And
do you have the Bonham? The naked Bonham tapes?
No.
There's an archive, like you can find it on various torrenting sites, or you can just find it on some websites that are up for like 6 months and then they get taken down by a DMCA. But all of the drum tracks, or not all, but most of the drum tracks from In Through the Outdoor, the Led Zeppelin record, are available as just solo tracks.
Oh, cool.
And I listen to them all the time in the car, just like ride around listening to the Fool in the Rain beat, like. And challenge myself to learn to play like that.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I could ruin my life listening to that.
Yeah, right. It's hard.
I could quit my job and listen to that.
Yeah, I highly recommend that anybody go and listen to the Fool in the Rain outtake, because it's the entire song, and you can hear before the song starts that John Bonham is falling down drunk.
Yeah,
like this like sort of groaning.
Yeah,
like you could hear Robert Plant. Because the isolation isn't complete, there's a bleed of him going, what in the fucking hell is going on? And Bonham counts drunkenly off and then just drops into this like airtight groove. It is just undeniable, like his adaptation of the Purdy Shuffle, and it just breaks my brain every time I try to play it. But did you complete the program at the Atlanta Institute of Music?
I did, and it was. You know what's funny?
That must have felt amazing.
There were some. Actually, you know what? I didn't. I just realized that I didn't. I took the 4th level twice. The second time, I did everything they had, but I didn't actually get the like graduation moment.
You didn't matriculate.
I didn't get it. God, what happened? There was like a financial problem. Like I couldn't straighten it out, and it was really disappointing at the time because I really wanted to be like what you said, feels amazing. I really wanted to be like, I completed a thing, yay! But I did all the work.
So how did you get from AIT to Athens?
From AM, yeah.
Yeah, AIM.
AM,
sorry.
yeah. So after I did that, I was seeing somebody who was playing in bands and completely self-taught, but also one of those genius types.
Yes.
Singer-songwriter, like prolific as hell, cranking it out. I have a history of dating people that I play music with, and it's a problem. But and it's you know, partially just like I'm attracted to people that have that kind of creative impulse where they can just crank out tunes or crank out creativity, visual art, anything like that's very appealing to me. That kind of.
I think for someone who works as hard as you do, you know, someone once described Michael Dahlquist, the drummer from Silkworm, as a hard hat and lunch pail drummer. Like he does the work.
Yeah.
But for someone, and I'm the same way.
Right.
To this, I don't have quite the work ethic that you do, and I'm very jealous of it. But
I don't know.
But then you meet someone who just spins sugar into gold all the time, and you're like, what the fuck, man?
Yeah, I hate those people.
It's frustrating, but it's also very alluring and compelling. You want to be around them to see if maybe you can catch the genie as it's sneaking out of the room. But
it turns out a lot of those people are very egomaniacal.
Yeah. Well, sometimes I think it's just the confidence of having, like, you don't, like they write a riff, they don't immediately think that's dumb and abandon it. Like, they don't have that inner critic sometimes to stop that impulse.
Yeah. So the person that I was dating was just absolutely cranking out songs, like really cool original stuff, and she was just so talented that it was kind of terrifying in a way. And I was like, God, what happens with this person? Like, I actually at one point tried to convince her to go to AIM, and then I realized that's not right for her. Like, that's not what you needed to do. Like, that's not what she needed to do at all. She needed to absolutely just stay in her bedroom and write stuff and record it herself. And like, it's all, you know, very self-perpetuated. And it was, and I really wanted to play music with her, but I also didn't, because I didn't want to influence it too much, because it was so compelling on its own. And I'm like, maybe you're just a singer with a guitar, and that's fine. You know, you don't need me coming in here with my freshly my brand new chops that I just paid for at school. You know right. Which, I mean, like, I was fresh out and I was like, let me show you this crazy shit I know how to do now. Right. You know, like, I can do this thing that I didn't know I could do, and like, you know, all that kind of stuff. And like, I had all these Latin grooves that I was obsessed with, and I'm still obsessed with, and I was just like, how do I incorporate this into, you know, your folk punk aesthetic? So I did eventually. Into the story as I did. So she was playing in a band with her brother, and her brother was living in Athens, and she would commute to Athens to you know, play drums or whatever. She, of course, a multi-instrumentalist, like self-taught on everything, like one of those people, you know.
One of those people.
Yeah, like,
I hate him.
Yeah, and never wanted me to teach her anything either, like, terrible student. And I was just like, you know, because like her drum parts were kind of sloppy, but they were kind of perfect too. And I was just like, man, just do it the way you're doing it. It's cool. Like, it's cool that you're self-taught and just winging it. And it's not clinical like me. I'm very clinical. I'm a surgeon. I think about it like I very literally like write out stuff that I'm interested in and try to it's not, just freewheeling. I wish I could be that way. But she was just so she was commuting to Athens, and we were talking like, man, I really want to get out of, Atlanta. She was living in Gwinnett at the time, and I was commuting from her house to Sandy Springs to work at a vet hospital, and like I was just so tired of it. And we were like, well, where should we move? And we were like, well, we could go to Athens. It's not too far away from our families, and like if some shit went down, we could get home. And we could also, we were both broke kids, and
You were out of the house at this point.
Yeah. I was, yes. And I was probably like 21, 20. And it was funny because all of my friends that I had in high school were leaving Athens when I was thinking about going,
right?
Because they went to UGA. They went to UGA, and then they were like, well, I got my degree. I'm going back to Atlanta, or I'm going home until I figure out what the hell I'm going to do. And then I was like, maybe I should go to Athens and play rock and roll or whatever. Yeah. Because I had been working and just surviving. And, I actually had a period of time when I was auditioning for every band I could find. And I would drive all over Atlanta. Like, I drove to South Georgia. I drove everywhere. And it was brutal. And this was when gas was like $5 a gallon because shit was blowing up and everything was terrible. Right. And, I just threw myself out there, and I tried out for all these bands, and none of them felt right. It was really cool though, because most of them wanted me to play. Yeah. The majority of them were like, cool. And I was like, I don't want to be in your like, Thompson Twins goth project. Sorry. Right. Or I don't want to be in your like, sounds kind of like Incubus project. It was a weird time when, dancey music was getting popular again.
Athens did not have a history of super drummers. Like, there was some just amazing, like guys like Curtis Crow, who was the drummer in Pylon, who could make the most amazing punk dance beat you've ever heard. But there weren't a lot of, and then all of a sudden there was Man Ray and Cinemechanic, and there was this explosion of like dense, mathematical rock. And then you seem to have got here like right about that time, right?
I got there. Well, okay, so we were talking about, me and my girlfriend at the time, we were talking about where we wanted to live, and we were talking about Nashville. And I didn't know shit about Nashville.
That would have been the time to get in, though.
Yeah, it probably would have. But I was like, maybe, and I was like, that's gonna be really competitive, and I wasn't interested in that. I didn't have the kind of like, I was pretending to be assertive, just like when I went to school and like sat with all those dudes and was like, I'm here now, and this is fine, right? Like it was. I had a lot of imposter syndrome, and I wasn't ready to just go full blown like, can I have a studio gig, please? Right. Can I play with your country band? And I just, hi, my name's Erika. Like, I'm interested in weird mathy shit and Latin grooves. Can I play in your country project, your cover band, whatever? Like, I wasn't ready for that. I wanted to do something more creative, and I never had my own band, really. I'd never been in a band that was just like mine and had my sound or whatever. So we decided to go to Athens, and actually the reason was that we did that was, it was going to be a lot easier, a lot cheaper. And then Nashville flooded. I don't know if you remember when that happened. It was a disaster. Nashville flooded, and we were like, oh shit, well, we're not going there. So that was like 2007.
Okay.
And so it turned out that a couple of the members of the band that she was in with her brother, one of their roommates moved out, and we were like, oh shit, let's take the bedroom. So we just did it. We just said yes, and I moved all my shit to Athens, and it was 2007. And I remember thinking like, man, I don't know. I'd been living in Atlanta. I wanted to live in a city. I wanted to live in a bigger city than Atlanta. I was like so into that life idea, of that life, something authentic. I wanted something, because I grew up in plastic, too much wealth, not identifying with it,
never more than 10 minutes from a Panera.
Yes. Which Panera?
Yeah, exactly.
But right. Exactly. And I was just like, man, I really want to just go somewhere with some culture and grit, and
with an actual bakery.
Yeah. So when we went to Athens, I was like, man, and it was right in the middle of football season, and I was like, oh, there's all these jocks around. I was like, this is the shit. These are the same fucking people that tortured me in high school. I don't want to be here. And the first few months I was just miserable. I got a job at a call center, like reading scripts for telemarketing and all this shit, which is literally the worst thing you can do to yourself. It's actually masochism, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize when I moved here, I was like, oh, I'll just get a job at an animal hospital. I didn't realize, like, oh, the University of Georgia actually has the biggest like
vet school
in the country. So I'm competing with literally an entire army of people that want those shitty jobs where you just clean cages. Like,
right.
So I had trouble there. And I did end up getting a job at the Humane Society. But anyway, I just didn't like it for a long time. And the first band I got in here was a friend. That band that it was called Cloak and Dagger Dating Service. They needed a bass player, and the bass player was like, "Oh, I'm in another band, and we need a drummer immediately because we're doing a Misfits cover set for Halloween." Because I moved in September of 2007, so it was coming up real quick, and they were like, "We need a drummer that can play an entire Misfits set like tomorrow." And I was like, well, shit, I don't have anything going on. I'll do it. So I just showed up with all these like older dudes. They weren't like way older. They were probably all like 27, 26. And I was, 23, 22. And I'm like, hey, I hear you need somebody to play Misfits set. And, so I just did it. And it was awesome. We played at Tasty World, which was a club that no longer exists. That was just super fun and weird. And I had an entire pumpkin thrown at me and it exploded on the rim of my bass drum. And it was like, I remember thinking like that would be upsetting for some people, but I was like, this is the most rock and roll thing that has ever happened to me. I was so excited. Like I'd been playing in a basement, like learning fucking complicated like rhythms for years. And now this pumpkin is on stage exploding in front of me. And I'm, I've got a pitcher of beer set to the side of my drum kit that somebody bought for me. And I'm just like, and everybody's in horror paint and shit. And I'm just like, this is what I want. This is what I've been waiting for. So I played in that, and it was just like a shitty bar band, but they were the best. It was like, it's actually called, the band was called Rockin' Wood. And that's based on Rockin' Wood Drive, which is right by your house where we are now. It was short-lived for me, but it was super fun. And actually, the last show I played with them was the night the Georgia Theater burned down. Which is the claim to fame for that band.
Right.
So we played there, and then I get a call at 5 a.m. They're like, oh shit, are you okay? Everything's on fire. There's ashes coming down from the sky. And it's like, what are you talking about? It's like, the theater's on fire. And I was like, I was just there like, 4 hours ago. I left at like 2:30 in the morning. It was fine. And, all of a sudden it's on fire.
And you know how many times people have said, hey, we could load out tomorrow. And I'm like, I'm not leaving my drums.
Nope, absolutely not. After that, I was just like, oh shit. But it was, I actually got investigated. All of us got investigated by arson detectives and shit.
That sounds insane.
It was really great for me because I had a shitty job and the arson detectives would show up and be like, we need to talk to you. And I'd be like, well, I got to go. The detectives are here. And then they would like try to schmooze me because they're like, this girl didn't start the fire.
Right.
She didn't start the fire. So they would take me out for coffee and try to be like, get me calm and be like, so who's got a grudge in the band? The funniest question they asked me was, was somebody like mad that they didn't make enough money at the show? And I was like, oh no, honey, we're in Athens. That's not how it works here.
Nobody makes money
Nobody
here.
makes any money here. We were just doing it for fun. Like there's absolutely no way that somebody was like, oh no, I didn't get my, quarter of $100. I didn't get my $20 at the end of the night.
Right, exactly.
So that was the whole thing. And then all during this time, the person I was dating, had all these songs that she'd been writing and kind of recording in our bedroom. And I actually set up a drum kit in that bedroom, and it was in a duplex, our poor neighbors. But we started just kind of, laying down really light tracks, like demo kind of stuff.
Sure.
And I was like, well, now we got enough. Like, let's do a band. Let's do this. And that was the first band that I felt like was really mine. And that was Romaninko. Me and Max Marston and TJ Machado, who was in that band Rockin' Wood and also played with Cloak and Dagger, and he also loved surfing the song just like I did. And so like we had this, Max was super prolific and just super super creative and had just tons and tons of songs that we could just accompany, like stuff that just never had bass and drums to it. So super fun for us to just be like, okay, well, we don't want to sacrifice the awesome thing that already exists. Like it was fine on its own, so let's not overplay it. And then we would just try to make it super creative with like, oh, like how could we incorporate that subtle, songo or
right
stuff like that. And we would find ways to kind of do that. And it was very very satisfying musically, and I really felt like that's kind of where the first place I was able to discover my own voice and like really like influence in a good way. And Max and I always were super professional in the way we were, very like also very clinical, like we would critique each other relentlessly, like, and it was always like, okay, right now we're in band mode, and it was never personal. It was always just like, I think you can do that better. That's cool, but it's not right, and we would just constantly evolve it until we both were satisfied. And you talk about somebody who creates a lot and is like, I hate this. Like that was her whole thing. Like we would have drilled something for like weeks, like a part that we thought was really like, and she like, I would be like, oh, my drum part is finally so sick. I love it. It's so exciting. And she would just be like, I hate this fucking riff. It's out. And I'm like, no.
Man, that was good. I'm really, really stoked to have done this interview. And I can't wait for you to hear part 2, because it's even heavier than that. Like, I can't tell you what it's like to sit in a room with someone that I already admire as much as I admire Erika, and find out how much she's overcome just to get here, and like how hard she's worked. I mean, no wonder she's such a great drummer. Anyway, part 2's out next week. Check it out. There'll be announcements on social media and Facebook. Thanks for listening. Thanks, as always, to our erstwhile producer, Jake Kreger. He was our first guest on the podcast. We talked about him a bunch on this episode because he's also an amazing drummer. I mean, I know the best drummers in the world. It's such a good feeling to know those people. But to be their friends it's such an honor. Anyway, Jake has helped out ever since I started the podcast. He sends me show notes every week and tells me about ways it could be better. So if the podcast is better now than the first time you heard it, it's all on Jake. So thanks, Jake. Thanks to Heil Microphones for these 2 gorgeous microphones that I use every week. They've been really great. They sound amazing. If you're thinking about buying better mics for your podcast, highly recommend checking into the Heil PR40. It's been really great for me. Thanks to Gene Wolfolk and the Powder Room for all of the music that we use here on the show. The intro music, the bumper, and the outro music are all songs from their record, Curtains. You can find that at thepowderroom.bandcamp.com. That album is still available for download. You can buy CD. I think they're finally out of vinyl. So unfortunately you can't still get vinyl copies of Curtains. I did not play on that record, but I did play on the next Powder Room record, which is called Lucky. If you'd like to see a picture of a band van burning down to the axles, go check out the Powder Room album Lucky on Bandcamp. You can see the worst tour morning of my life shaking out right there. That van burned down in Chapel Hill, North Carolina after we played a show there. Way more excitement than I ever want to have on tour. Hey, I don't usually throw this out there, but I don't have any tours through the end of the year. I got some money in the bank. I'm not really freaking out, but I'm bored. Until Pinky Doodle Poodle gets back from Tokyo, I don't have any touring to do. So if you want me to play some dates with your band or play on your record, hit me up at crashandride@protonmail.com. My rates are pretty reasonable, and I sure do like to play music. crashandride@protonmail.com. I guess that's all I've got to say this week. Tune in next week for part 2 of Erika's interview. It's amazing. There's a special little surprise twist at the end, too, which it's good. Very special episode, as Erika put it. It's a very special episode of Crash and Ride. So until we speak again, take care of yourself. Be kind to yourself. Ask for help if you need it. Go see live music, support your favorite band, and remember, loud guitars save lives.